Welcome back to Flint Hills Briar. I'm Gareth. It's a lovely early October morning. The sun's been up for just a little while, not too long. It's a Thursday morning. I had the day off today because I have to work this weekend. So I figured I should maybe come out, go out somewhere and enjoy a pipe and record a video. Do some more storytelling. So I decided to come out to this spot, which is the spot where, a little over a year ago now, last month, after I bought that cheap pipe at the liquor store that has a cigar humidor. I bought that cheap pipe and a couple pouches of tobacco. It's like great value stuff. I think that's what it's called, great value. Anyway, I got the cherry Cavendish and the English mixture. Strangely enough, that English mixture really isn't that bad. And I came out here, essentially to this spot, and proceeded to burn my tongue, of course. But it served to get the ball rolling to, where I find myself at now, over a year later. And this morning I'm enjoying some why can't I think of the name of it? The manufacturer, Galwith Hogarth and Company, Bosun Cut Plug. Which is very much so a Lakelands blend. Definitely has that Lakelands flavor. So if you love it, you love it. If you hate it, you hate it. If you can't stand the whole soapy, perfumey, bottom of grandma's purse sort of flavor, you're not going to like this one at all. But I honestly like it. There's something about that flavor that works. I was doing some reading about the whole Lakelands floral flavor thing, and they were saying how to people in the United States, it really tends to strike a lot of us as just an odd, bizarre flavor that does not go with things that you would eat or smoke or consume. However, over in England, where the stuff's from, quite a while back, they colonized India and other places and incorporated culinary things from like India. And some of those Asian cuisines incorporate flavors that are more floral and such. So over in England, they're more used to flavors like that in foods. And it kind of reminds me of the first time I ever tried jasmine green tea. I probably didn't even finish the cup because I just thought, this is disgusting. Why would anybody flavor tea with, I don't know what I was expecting, but I had this cup of tea that was basically flavored with flowers, and it disgusted me. It just seemed wrong. Now I like jasmine green tea. I'm not sure what made me try it again, but I do like it. But anyway, so yeah, enjoying a very Lakelands type blend. Can't really see it. There's a lake right behind me, behind these cattails. There were also some cattle back that way, mooing and bawling, and I think it's close to feeding time. So they're getting antsy. But the purpose of this video is to relate a story that recently came to my mind. Pat the Paladin Piper and his wife recently reshared the story of their apparent Bigfoot encounter in Colorado. So it reminded me of my Sasquatch story. It's interesting because where Pat and his wife were at, they're in Colorado. I can't remember. I want to say it was back in 2012. It's an area that's kind of north, just to the northwest of Dillon, Silverthorne. Those two towns are like run right. They're just right next to each other. I don't know why there's two towns there, because it's basically one continuous town, and they're not big by any means. It's on the Dillon Reservoir there. It's right off I-70. The mountain range there, it's the Gore Range. It's kind of a sub-range of the Rockies that run through Colorado. Where they were at was more on the kind of the northeast side of it, roughly. And back in 2006, so it would have been, I guess, 6 years before. Is that right? I think so. 6 years before they had their encounter there. I ventured into the Gore Range myself, and it was funny that they were out there in June, and they ran into like really deep snow to where if I remember right, I think he said he was post-holing up to his like chest level. Just made getting around that snow very difficult. When I went out, it was also in June. I happened to be out in the state, meeting up with some friends, and we climbed the Little Matterhorn in the Rocky Mountain National Park, and I was doing some visiting. This is before I got into X-ray school. So I wanted to visit one of the clinical sites out in Colorado, which is the one I actually was at. So anyway, I wanted to go up to Deluge Lake, which is down on the side of the Gore Range that's closer to Vail. So it's kind of the southern end of it. And I ran into a lot of deep snow there too, a lot of post-holing. I mean, mine stuff was... if I had wallowed into it deep enough, I probably could have found thigh-deep snow. And I was by myself, and I had a pack that probably weighed too much, of course. But I also was carrying like crampons and an ice axe, so I had some climbing equipment, so that increased the weight somewhat. But I made my way up the trail, couldn't see the trail most of the time because there was snow all over the place. But that's why you bring a map. I didn't have a GPS at the time. Didn't have a smartphone back then either. But anyway, I made my way up to Deluge Lake. Spent the first night, I'm pretty sure, camped on the kind of one of the frozen parts of the lake. And there's three mountains there I wanted to climb: Valhalla Peak, Grand Traverse Peak, and Snow Peak. And I did all those, but I think it was the first night I was up there. I heard, just seemed, it struck me as a little odd, but I heard a coyote howling from up on this mountain ridge. And I want to say the next day is when I climbed up Valhalla Peak. And it was on that ridge where apparently heard that coyote howling on. And it was up at like 12 or 13,000 feet. I mean, it was a pretty exposed. I mean, I don't mean like sharp precipice sort of exposed, but it was just this high exposed mountain ridge. Thought it odd that a coyote would be up there howling at night, but whatever. Just odd, but at the same time, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily totally out of the, realm of the normal. And up at Deluge Lake there was a cabin, which I don't know if at some point some research or something was being done up there, but there was this cabin that had been built. And oddly, most of the floor in it, and the way it was constructed, it was, I think, a bit on a slope, kind of below where the lake was. And somebody had gone in and pulled up most of the plywood on the floor. Some of it was there, a lot of it wasn't. So there's enough there I could lay out my sleeping pad and sleeping bag. I stayed in there the second night. I had heard that it was up there. I couldn't find it the first day I got up there. Probably got up there kind of late. In part because of all the snow I had to hike through, find my way through. So it was nice to have the cabin to stay in, even the state it was in wasn't that great. But anyway, I'd been up to my one trip into the Gore Range was in June. Lots of post hoeing and snow, and I had kind of a somewhat odd animal encounter, or audio sighting, listening, whatever you'd call that, hearing. But my Sasquatch story takes place in New Mexico, in the Sangre de Cristo Range. And interestingly enough, just a little over a week ago, about a week and a half ago, I guess now, my wife and I were in New Mexico, coming back from Las Vegas. And we drove through the Sangre de Cristo Range again. But back in 2012, so this would have been the same year that Pat and his wife had their Bigfoot encounter up in Colorado. In 2012, my wife and I, we went out to Colorado, to New Mexico in, it was like early August. I remember it was when the London Olympics were still going on. Because I had been out there, I'd been out to this general area in New Mexico before on trips when I went to Philmont, back when I was a Boy Scout. And both of the trips, we actually did the same itinerary. And as part of it, we hiked up into an area north of the Boy Scout ranch property. And it's in the Carson National Forest, and I don't think it's a designated wilderness. Well, I know it's not a wilderness area, but it's like the Valley Vidal unit or something. And I think it was actually all that land was part of a land grant from the Mexican government back in the 1800s. And when that part of the country became part of the United States, the federal government decided to honor those land grants. So that's why there's these big swaths of land down in that area, which are or were privately owned. That's part of the reason why the Boy Scouts own that ranch, that Philmont Ranch property now, because it was, you know, different owners had owned it and passed it down over the years. And anyway, it's just basically the Valley Vidal area is just like a national forest type thing. There's campgrounds there. So I thought it'd be fun for my wife, because she'd never been down there. Thought it'd be fun to go out, stay in one of the National Forest Service campgrounds. And there was a mountain there called Little Castilla Peak, which I had seen on trips down there, but hadn't climbed. So I thought it'd be fun to hike up that. So that's what we did. We drove down. We were living in Southwest Kansas at the time, so it wasn't really that far of a drive. We spent the first night in the campground in this National Forest Service campground. They're somewhat developed. They have like little driveway things that usually have gravel in them, so you can park in them. There's a fire ring there and like a tent platform or whatever. And just passed a normal night the first night, and then the second night. This was after I had done my little hike up Little Castilla Peak. We were in our campground, and my wife, this was around the time that we were watching that Finding Bigfoot show, because at the time it was still entertaining to watch before it got to be just too much of the same stuff over and over and over again of them going out doing the same research things, with a little gimmick thrown in here and there. They would, get the same results, being basically no results. Eventually, it just kind of wasn't that fun to watch anymore. But anyway, so this was out the time when that show was on, and my wife and I watched it. The sun's coming up, getting in my eyes here. Coming up over the hill here. We're in our campsite. We were joking like, "Oh yeah, this area looks really squatchy." There's probably some squatches back there, back around here somewhere, And that second night, I was cooking our supper. Can't remember what I made for, the main meal, but I cooked. I think it was a peach cobbler in my Dutch oven there, and while we're cooking, we heard some Sasquatches up to some Sasquatch activity, and it was very easy to hear because it was occurring pretty close to where we were camped. In fact, it was in the campsite right next to ours. And yeah, there were these two squatches that were going at it, and you could hear them. Man, the sun's really bright. You could hear them slapping together. And my wife and I were just cracking up. That we're just like, oh, it's a couple squatches slapping. It was the people in the next campground over that had, I guess, I don't know if they had eaten or not, but, this is like the sun's going down. They had gone into their tent and, were being kind of noisy. But forever since, it's been a joke between my wife and I about the squatches we heard slapping there in that squatchy area in New Mexico. Just a funny story, and that's really my only Sasquatch encounter that I can speak to. I've gone out to a lot of wilderness areas. oftentimes by myself. You know, I don't know if Bigfoots would be more attracted to maybe groups of people where they would like be curious or whatever, which I wouldn't have going for me when I go out by myself, or if maybe if, you know, it's a small, like it's like just one person or two people, they may be more likely to want to investigate what's going on. I don't know. I would tend to think, if anything, being quiet and kind of having just like a, you know, when, you know, just being out solo, you'd maybe be more likely to hear something, see something, if anything's going on. And honestly, I've never had any encounters or anything like that. Haven't heard anything that's just like really out of the ordinary. I guess I need to draw this video to a close here, but I will share probably the thing that struck me the weirdest that I've ever heard would have been back in, late August or something in 2008. It was when I was doing my clinicals out in Colorado. I decided to go out and primarily climb up a mountain called Elk Tooth, which is in the Indian Peaks Wilderness, which is just south of Rocky Mountain National Park, and climb some of the kind of connecting mountains along that kind of ridge there. And I drove out like that evening, the evening before, and I started hiking, and I got out, man, I started hiking at like, it was at least 10 o'clock at night, maybe 11, because to Elk Tooth and back, it was, can't remember if it was close to a 20-mile round trip or something like that, but it was going to be a fairly long hike. So I wanted to get most of that, get a head start on it. So I hiked several hours into the night. It was like midnight or past midnight. Found a good spot off the trail. There's just a little cleared meadow area. So I just bivouacked, basically. I put on all the clothes I had, which weren't too many, and I laid a couple trash bags out on the ground and just crawled under one of those emergency space blankets, and spent the night, stayed warm enough, and then the next morning before the sun came up, just a couple hours before the sun came up, I got up, packed up my stuff, such as it was, and headed on down the trail. And as I was going, there's the trail kind of follows where this creek runs along, and I had my headlamp on, and I'm just proceeding up the trail, and I hear this animal, and it's just, you know, I can see with my headlamp, everything else is just pitch black, can't see a thing. And I startled an animal, and I could hear it take off. I'm hiking up this valley, so the valley wall slopes up to my right, and I just hear this animal just running up the side of the valley, and it just in the pitch black, and it sounded massive. It was just crunching through trees and everything else. And you know, I assume it was probably an elk or a deer, maybe a moose, but I mean, it sounded just massive. I mean, if somebody would have told me it was a dinosaur that was running up through there, I probably would have believed him based on the way that thing sounded. So, like, creepy animal sounds, that's probably the creepiest thing I've heard from just like a large animal standpoint. But yeah, I think it was probably just an elk or something. But anyway, this video has gone on way too long probably already, so I'm going to draw it to a close here and reposition myself anyway and keep smoking my pipe, because this sun's getting to be a little bit too much. But thanks for joining me for this little video this morning, and my New Mexico Sasquatch story, such as it is. But I'm Gareth with Flint Hills Briar. I'll catch you next time.